Yeah, so hello all, myself Smita Nasan, and you already got my introduction from Nandadeep. So let's start and let's check this what exactly the Azure AI. So first of all, let me just give you some of the more introduction that what exactly we are going to do in today's session. So the first one is we are going to do this unlocking of AI power. So we are going to explore the Azure OpenAI integration with this power platform. And then the agenda for the today is we are going to have an introduction to OpenAI and Azure OpenAI integration of OpenAI with Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agents, and then the OpenAI API in Power Platform using a custom connector, and then we will going to explain and we're going to show you how we can just apply this Azure OpenAI service on your data. So let's start one by one. So the first one is let's check what is this exactly the Azure AI. So I would like to give some of the introduction or background about this Azure AI. So Azure AI is a collection of artificial intelligence services offered by Microsoft as a part of its Azure cloud platform. The Azure AI services are designed to make it easy for the developers and organizations to add AI capabilities to their applications without the need for extensive expertise in AI. So Azure's AI services are the tools for the solving the AI workloads and can be categorized into the three groupings like Azure Machine Learning Program, Cognitive Services, and Applied AI Services. So this Azure AI includes a wide range of services such as Azure Machine Learning, a cloud-based platform that allows developers to build, deploy, and manage machine learning models as well as to create a custom machine learning algorithms. The second one is Azure Cognitive Services, a collection of pre-built API that allow developers to add the capabilities such as natural language understanding, computer vision, and speech recognition to their application. The third one is Azure Applied AI Services, a suite of scenarios based services that enable organizations to accelerate the adoption, such as Azure Cognitive Search, which provides a search capabilities over the structured and unstructured data by using a machine learning models. So these services are integrated with Azure platform, which provides the capabilities such as scalability, security, compliance, as well as many other tools and the services that can be used to build and deploy AI enabled application. So the Azure Open AI services are designed to make it easy for the developer and organizations to add AI capabilities to their applications without the need for extensive expertise in AI. So the Microsoft Azure Open AI services allow developers to quickly build, deploy, and scalable AI-enabled application and to take the advantages of the scalability, security, and compliance capabilities of Azure. And Azure AI integration in AI Builder within the Microsoft Power Platform allows the businesses and developers to quickly and easily build and deploy custom AI models and to integrate them with Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents in order to add advanced capabilities and improve the data management and the security. It also allows to easily scale up and improve the performance of the models as well as easily integrating with other Azure services. So the Microsoft has adopted Azure AI across a wide range of its products and services, and in order to improve the functionality, performance, and user experience, some example where the Microsoft has adopted the Azure AI at a scales which include Office 65, Dynamic 365, Bing, LinkedIn, Xbox, and gaming. So, for those who are new to this concept, I would like to give some more introduction about what is exactly this Office 65, Dynamic 365, Bing, LinkedIn, Xbox, and gaming. So, Office 65 is a Microsoft has integrated the Azure AI capabilities into Office 65, such as a natural language processing, computer vision, and the text analysis to improve the functionality of the product, such as Outlook and Word. This allows the user to perform the tasks such as automatically summarizing long documents or automatically tagging the images in the email attachment. For the Dynamics 365 is a collection of the business applications that enable organizations to manage the customer data and the interaction as well as automate the business processes. So within Azure AI integration, Dynamic 365 offers the features like the predictive lead scoring, sentiment analysis, and the chatbots to help the businesses better understand and interact with their customers. When it comes to the Bing, Microsoft search engine uses the Azure AI to analyze the large amount of data and improve the search result for user. So for example, Bing uses the natural language processing to understand the user's queries and generate the more relevant search result. LinkedIn is a Microsoft professional networking site. LinkedIn uses the Azure AI to help the users to find a job opportunity, connect with others in their fields, and improve the performance of its recruiting tools. So, for example, LinkedIn uses the natural language processing to help the match the job seekers with the relevant job opportunities and uses the machine learning to help the recruiter to find the best candidates for them. When it's come to the Xbox and gaming, so the Azure uses, Microsoft uses the Azure AI to power its Xboxing gaming console. So Azure AI allows Xbox to learn a gamer's preferences and automatically adjust the gaming experience. Additionally, it allows the Xbox to improve the performance of the games and to offer the more personalized gaming experiences. So these are just a few examples of how Microsoft has adopted the Azure AI at scale within its product and services. So overall, Microsoft has been using Azure AI across its various products and services to improve the user experiences and to offer a more personalized, efficient, and automated experience to its customer. So now let's go ahead and see what is exactly mean by OpenAI. So some introduction to this OpenAI. So the OpenAI is a non-profit artificial intelligence research company. Their goal is to advance digital intelligence in the way that is most likely to benefit the humanity as a whole. It's generating the natural language, such as summarizing a complex text from different reading levels, suggesting the alternative wording for sentences, and much more. Like text completion generates an edited text, embedding, search, classifying, and compare the text. Also, it's for generating the code, such as translating the code from one programming language into another, identifying and troubleshooting the bugs in code, and many more. Also, for generating the images, such as generating the images for the publications from the text description, and many more. So now let's see how this OpenAI plus Microsoft, how it's exactly. So the Microsoft has a relationship with OpenAI to collaborate on the development of artificial intelligence technology. The partnership aims to accelerate the development of advanced AI system and bring the benefits of AI to more people. So the Microsoft has partnered with OpenAI to deliver on the three major goals. The first one is to utilize the Azure's infrastructure, including the security, compliance, and regional availability to help the user to build enterprise-grade applications. The second one is to deploy the OpenAI AI model capabilities across the Microsoft product, including and beyond the Azure AI products. And the third one is to use the Azure to power all of OpenAI's workload. So the Azure OpenAI service gives the customer advanced language AI with OpenAI GPT-4, GPT-3 codecs and daily models with the security and enterprise promise of the Azure. So the Azure OpenAI co-develops the APIs with OpenAI, ensuring the capabilities and a smooth transition from one to the another. So with Azure OpenAI, customer get the security capabilities of Microsoft Azure while running the same models as OpenAI. And the Azure OpenAI offers the private networking, regional availability, and responsible AI content filtering. So GPT-3 is for the text completion, a set of models can be understand and generate the natural language. The codex is a set of models that can understand and generate the code, including the translating the natural language to code, and that's been a train on both natural language and the code. So Delhi is a set of models that can generate and manipulate the images from the natural language. So you need access to this Azure OpenAI, and for that access, you have to request the access from this link. We will put that link in a chat window later. So, as a part of Microsoft commitment to using AI responsibility, access to Azure OpenAI is currently limited, and customers that wish to use this Azure OpenAI must submit a registration form for both the initial experimentation success and again for approval for use in a production.
Okay, so now that quickly see like how we can go ahead and create one of the resource that you can see here, which is Azure OpenAI. So what you can do here is like you can just click on create a resource, and you can just try to search for OpenAI. Okay, so click that. You should be able to get to the Azure OpenAI that can be found into the marketplace as well. So once you click this first card, which is for OpenAI, click create. There's one thing that you will observe that this particular resource, Azure OpenAI resource, is not available across all of the regions, but it is limited to certain regions, which includes Canada East US, a couple of regions there, and then again France Central, Japan, North Central, UK, and West Europe. Okay, so maybe if you are not falling under this region, maybe just try to get the one which is more closer to you. On the pricing tier, this one has got just standard S0 kind of an pricing tiers. And if you want to have a look at the pricing details, then these are all of the pricing details, like how much will it cost when you will start using the Azure OpenAI. So if in case based on the region where you want to host that Azure OpenAI resource, it will cost you differently. So if in case you plan to do it in East US, or whether you are planning to do it in the other regions, it will cost you differently. So let's say, for example, we take an example of we want to host this resource into East US, and the currency with which we are paying to Microsoft is United States, US dollar. In that case, this is kind of an pricing model based on the models that we are going to use. So whenever we will go ahead and create the models in Azure OpenAI, so those are the models which will help us to translate the text, or maybe translate the code, or generate the images, and all those kind of things, right? So in this case, if in case you want to go ahead and do that, so for GPT 3.5 Turbo, it is going to take you almost 0.002 US dollar per thousand tokens. So here means just to keep this terminology very much simple, what is mean by token? It's like maybe you can relate it to a word, not exactly a word kind of a thing, but just to make it pretty much simple to help you understand what is mean by token. You can just consider like maybe token equals word. Okay, so let's say for example, if I ask the chat GPT, or maybe GPT 3.5 turbo model, like what is your name? So in this case, at least I'm using four words. What is your name? So in that case, probably I'm just consuming four tokens, and in response to that, I will get some kind of an output from the model that I'm going to use, and again that one will be counted towards the pricing. Okay, so based on the tokens are being exchanged between you and the model which is being used by OpenAI, you are going to get charged on that. Again, there is a much more pricing, much more charges onto the GPT-4 model, being it is the latest one. Also, it supports images, all those kind of a thing. So for the 8K context or 32K context, whichever you want to use, these are kind of an charges that you will have to pay per thousand tokens per your prompt. So again, here there are two new terminologies that we are coming across. First one is a prompt, and then second one is the completion. So to keep it very much simple, prompt is something like the question that you are going to ask to that model is nothing but a prompt. So let's say, for example, if I ask the question to the model like how is the temperature today at Pune, in that case, that is my prompt. In reply to that, I will get some kind of a response, which is nothing but the completion. Okay. So again, there are various APIs available. For example, completion APIs, which we can go ahead and start consuming those in our applications. And we are going to see that how we can do that. But only thing here is like we have got prompt, which is nothing but our question to the model, and then we have got completion, which is nothing but the answer coming out of that model to our application. Again, for example, if you are going to use DALL-E kind of an image model to generate the images or maybe alter the images, in those cases, you will be charged almost $2 per 100 images. Okay, because these are the newly images that are being created based on your requirements. So let's say, for example, if you just want to create a image which probably doesn't exist anymore into the world, maybe an elephant walking onto the moon or something like that. So in that case, it can go ahead, try out its own imagination and create the images for you. But the charges will be like to USD per 100 images, right? Again, for example, if you want to keep using the older embedding kind of an models, so you can go ahead and use the ADA model, which is the fastest one, and then again you will be charged just 0.0001 USD per thousand tokens. Okay, so these are kind of an pricing. So based on the region where you are creating your resource, and based on what kind of a models that you are going to use, and thirdly, like what kind of a prompt and completions that you are going to get or use inside of your application, you are going to get charged. And that's the reason the prompt engineer, it is kind of a newly role which is getting introduced, which is a very effective role, which can help you generate the specific prompt and get the specific completion result from that, right? So these are something about the pricing. Once you fill out this form, there will be one resource created, something like this. So this is again kind of a very much normal resource that you will see onto the Azure OpenAI, or maybe all of the Azure portals. So in the overview section here, you will get all of the information like where it is located, what is the endpoint, and everything for that. And again, same thing, like you do have these keys and endpoint from where you should be able to go ahead and start using that resource, right? So quickly, what I will do is I will just duplicate this because once I go into the Azure OpenAI Studio, again, probably instead of clicking the back button, probably I will just have the new window open. All right, so now that let's say we want to go ahead and start creating any of the model, how we can go ahead about that. So once you click this, go to Azure Open AI Studio. This window will take you to the newly created Azure Open AI Studio. If in case you want to memorize the URL, it is oai.azure.com, openai.azure.com. So again, if you directly hit this URL into the browser, it will ask you to log in, and then you will be taken to this place wherein you will be able to see all of the models as well as all of the completion API which I was talking about. So this model is very effective thing, like based on what kind of an requirements that you want to go ahead and start using, you can only go ahead and create those or use those kind of a model based on the region wherein you are using your deployment or maybe creating your resource. There will be models which one will be available or which may not be available. Okay, so now that here you can see that for the for this Azure resource which was created in the West Europe region, I have got only these many modules or models to go ahead and use. So now that since we want to go ahead and start using this model, I can just select this model, click on deploy, and that one will fall under the deployment. So like this one will be created into the deployment. Only thing is like once you create that deployment, it takes almost 5 to 7 minutes to start using your model. That's the reason I have went ahead and created this new deployment. But simple thing is like go to the models first, try to analyze what kind of a situation that you want to go ahead and tackle your situation, and just go ahead and select the model, click deploy, and the new deployment for that model will get created, right? So now that we have this deployment called as GPT 3.5 Turbo. So This is kind of an ChatGPT 3.5 based model wherein we'll be able to give some kind of an um, prompt and we'll be able to get the completions out of that. So if in case you want to go ahead, use that, select this deployment, click open in playground, and this one will take you to the chat playground. So again, there is a subtle difference between the completions API and chat completion APIs. So whenever you will create any kind of an APIs, always it is recommended to go ahead and use the chat completion APIs, which are kind of a new API designed for working with chat models, which includes GPT 3.5 Turbo as well as GPT-4. And always it is recommended using this API moving forward instead of the normal completion APIs. So in this API, what happens differently from the completion API is that you pass in the series of messages rather than the prompt as a raw string, which makes it easier to manage the conversation. So what is mean by that? It's now that, let's say for example, I'm into the chat completion API, and from here you can see that I should be able to go ahead and add the system message. At the same time, for example, if I go ahead and use the template, or maybe if I just go ahead and add the example, here you can see that we will be able to go ahead and use the user as well as assistant as well. So what is mean by that is system message is like we are we are kind of directing our model to be someone. Let's say, for example, I want to give a system message to my model that, okay, you are kind of an AI assistant, or maybe you are kind of a chef, or maybe you're kind of an bot who is going to help our users, maybe resolving their queries onto a specific product. Then it can put himself or that model into the shoes of that particular AI assistant and start responding to you in that fashion. The example here is something like, for example, if I, as a user, what kind of a question I will be asking to this model or to this chat completion API, and then assistant will be like some kind of an reply that I'm expecting from this kind of a model. So if in case you want to train it a bit, you can go ahead and use this user and assistant examples as well, or these prompts as well. But it is not at all not at all necessary to go ahead and use this user and assistant. But still, what I'm going to do is in both my examples. In one example, I will use this user and assistant uh, responses as well. And in one example, I'm just going to use the system messages. Okay, that's it. All right. So with that, what I will do is let me just quickly go into the demo environment, and then let us see how we are going to use this chat completion API with Power Apps. But okay, before we do that, how we are going to achieve this? Obviously, now that we know that, or maybe before that, let me just go back to my Azure portal and I will show you how this one works. Okay, so now that I'm again back to my chat playground, let's say I will delete this messages, and this is just an AI assistant that helps people to find information. So um, let's say I will just type something like how do I find um Microsoft Bing. Okay, okay, and I will just send this message. And now that this particular system message is going to come into the picture, and it is going to replies back. So this is the bot response, which is a chat completion API response that we have got, and it is asking me to go to this web browser at www.bing.com, and from there I will be able to get everything that I need. So yeah, miss, now that we know how to use the prompt and how to get the completion using this chat completion API. But now that we also want to see like how we are going to use these capabilities into any of our application. Okay, so maybe a interest of developers, like how we are going to use this. So in that case, there is a button here called as view code. Okay, so I'm just highlighting this. So once you click this view code, this is maybe a more of interest to every developers that we have got here. So we have got some ready code sample available in Python as well as JSON. If in case you are a C sharp guy, you can go ahead and use the C sharp code, or you can just use this curl. So curl is something like if you just want to test it out, this maybe onto the PowerShell or maybe onto the command prompt, you can simply go ahead and use this. So what kind of information that we have got here? So here you can see that at least we have got this endpoint, which is also mentioned here. So this is the endpoint that we have got. Then again, we have got key that needs to be substituted here on line number 3. So this is the key that we have got. We are going to deal with the content type of application JSON to make it very much simpler. And now that this is the kind of a message, so in this message we have got certain roles defined, which is a system. So this is the entire information that we have given as a system message, so that our model deployment can act like that AI assistant. That same information you are able to see here, the highlighted one. At the same time, for example, if you want to go ahead and give certain kind of an examples, like what could be a user message and what could be the output. In that case, you can go ahead and define the roles, like user and what kind of an questions the user might ask, and then role as an assistant and what kind of an answers are expected from that bot. So now that we have got all those messages with the role of system, with the role of user, and with the role of assistant, and we should be able to go ahead and use all these kind of an things into our code. But before we again do that, there are certain parameters as well. So here we do have got max tokens. That means how much maximum tokens that we are expecting the results from. But again, note here that whenever we deal with tokens, obviously we need to make a note of the charges that we might get, because if you increase this number, obviously you are going to get more response or maybe a more longer response, but again you will be charged based on that as well. Temperature is again one kind of an parameter wherein if you keep it to 0, you are going to get realistic answer. If you take it to 1, so it could be in the range of 0 to 1 itself. If you take it to 1, you probably not get realistic or maybe some kind of an random answers as well. Then again, there are other things as well, like frequency penalty and presence penalty. Probably we will not go into that, but again there is something kind of a top probability or top underscore p, which is more of like temperature. So maybe I will just say maybe just play with one of the parameter, either with the temperature or with the top underscore p. If in case you want to set this parameter, how you can do that, onto the extreme right hand side we have a configuration tab, and we do have a parameters. So this is a place from where you should be able to go ahead and set the temperature. If you set it to 0, you're going to get the realistic answers. And again, if you go back to the view code, you can see that everything is reflected back here. Okay. So now that we are just going to use the functionality from here, like now that we know that this is the kind of an API or the REST API that we can see, and we are going to use our custom connector to go ahead and use that. Because once I say custom connector, obviously custom connector are kind of a wrapper on top of the REST APIs. So that means we should be able to go ahead, consume this Azure OpenAI in the form of wrappers called as custom connectors in Power Platform. All right, so now that let's go ahead and try to see how we are going to get that. So for that, already I'm into the make.powerautomate.com, and under this data tab, I'm going to click custom connectors. Okay. So once you click the custom connectors, this is a place from where you should be able to go ahead and define your own custom connector. So for this demo, just to keep it simple, I'm going to import one of the custom connector, which is available on the GitHub from the community. But again, in some time, Kunj is going to show you how you should be able to go ahead and create your own custom connector as well. Okay, so now that let's say I just go ahead with custom. So again, if in case you are not familiar with this open source repository where all those custom connectors are, just click here to explore all those open sources. So here under the custom connectors, we have got all of the connectors available, and the one which we are going to use now is this Azure OpenAI service. So this is the custom connector which is built by community by this person, Robin. So this is kind of a nice custom connector which is available, which we should be able to go ahead and consume all of those chat API or chat completion API or just the completion API from the Azure OpenAI. So I'm just going to use the master branch, and from here I'm going to use the custom connector, which is Azure OpenAI service. Okay. Once I do that, click continue, and we are going to see like what are the parameters which are available here. So this is just the description which is written by the author, and the host is openai.azure.com. Why this is the host? Because let's say, for example, if I can go back to the Azure OpenAI, here you can see that this is the name which was given when I had created this Azure OpenAI resource, and it is sitting behind this openai.azure.com host. So that's the reason whenever you will see the host, this is openai.azure.com, and base URL is something if in case you want to get appended some kind of an URL frequently behind your host, then you can do it. But all of the APIs that we see here, they are simply under this Azure OpenAI, openai.azure.com itself. So that's the reason we don't have any base URL here. If in case you go into the security, security tells about how you are going to use the or how you are going to authenticate against that REST API. And simply from here, you can see that we are going to do that with the key which is available to us. Okay, so that's the reason you can see that API key has been selected here. If I go into the definition, definition contains all of the REST API endpoints and how we are going to consume those. So here we have got the chat completion. We also have got create completion, list deployments, and all of those things. So we are going to consume the Azure OpenAI resource from these actions. Again, here it is defined like what are the input parameters needed and what are the output parameters that we can expect. We are just going to see it in a meanwhile, like how we are able to go ahead and create those custom connector as well. But I'm just explaining this custom connector which is available to us. And now that, for example, if you go into the test, you should be able to test that connector. But before that, I need to go ahead and create this connector. So once you create this connector, before you go ahead and start using it into your applications, it is always the best practice to go ahead and test it out. So let me just create that connector and we will test it out, and then we are going to use that into Power Apps. Okay. So let it take some time to go ahead and create the connector. All right. Okay, so now that when that connector is created, what is the thing that we are going to see? Like we need to go ahead and give it some kind of an endpoint, or at least this host header onto which my OpenAI resource is located on, and then this the key where from where it should be able to go ahead and consume the information. Okay, okay, it is still taking some time to create the connector. All right, so the connector has created successfully. Now that the only thing is like I just need to give the deployment ID. And okay, no, before that, I need to go ahead and create a new connection before I hit any of the endpoints. So I just have click that new connection, and here it will ask me for the instance name and the API key. So for the instance name, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the endpoint name, which I have used while creating this OpenAI resource. Okay, so I will just paste it here, and then there is a API key. So API key, I can get it from here as well. Or if you want to get it from the Azure portal, you can just click keys and endpoint, and from there you should be able to get this key as well, right? Okay, so I'm just going to use this API key, and I will just click on create connection. So once I create connection, the connection should be ready. Let me just go ahead, refresh this, and now you can see that this connection is ready. So here we do have deployment ID. So from where we can get the deployment ID is from here. So the deployment ID in this case is the model that you have created. So if in case I go back to the deployment, this is the deployment ID GPT-35-turbo, which I can go ahead put it here. And okay, that's it. I'm not going to change anything default here, and I'm just going to test the operation. So the operation that I'm testing is this chat completion. So if in case everything goes well, we should be able to see the response coming back to us from the Azure OpenAI model, which is the operation failed. Um, okay, request timed out. But okay, and anyways, I hope this should work into the Power Apps. So let me just quickly go into the Power Apps, and we'll create a simple app to go ahead and use this custom connector. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new Canvas app. I'm going to call it as OpenAI. Click create. Once it gets created, I'm just going to add one um, text input there, wherein we can type the question, one button which we can use to post the query to the OpenAI, and then the label to get the output, right? So let me just do that quickly. Firstly, I'm going to add the text input wherein we should be able to answer or ask the question to the OpenAI. I'm going to insert the button here as well. Okay, so button is here, and then I'm going to insert the text label. Okay, all right. So the text label is here. Let me just increase the height and width, and that's fine. So now that what is going to happen is that we are going to use this text input to write something into this, which and when we will click this button, we are going to hit the endpoint, the chat completion endpoint, and then we are going to get the result, which we are going to showcase into this text output. Okay, so first thing is that we are going to go ahead and do the variable thing. So when the screen is loaded, I'm just going into the on visible thing, and we just want to set this label text to blank. So label text is nothing but just our global variable in this case. So now that we have this global variable set, now that what I will do is I will go to this button, and on the on select of this button, we are going to set that label text with some kind of an value. Okay, so okay, before that, what we need to do is we need to go ahead and go to this data. We just need to click add data. We just need to go into the connectors, and here we have got the Azure OpenAI service, the connector that we had created. But let me just refresh it, and let me just add it here. So now that we just have added the reference of that connector that has been created as a custom connector, which is with the name of Azure OpenAI service. And now that we are going to use that in our code. So what we want to do is whenever we will click on that button, we want to pass on the input which is given in that text box to the Azure OpenAI chat completion API. So I will just try to set that label text. Okay. And then here we are going to use that Azure OpenAI service dot chat completion, because we are going to use the chat completion API. So what kind of a thing is expecting? So first thing is it is expecting the deployment ID. So deployment ID is in this case is this one, the GPT-35-turbo. Okay. And the next thing is we just need to supply the API version. So from where we can get the API version is, for example, if I again go back to the uh, deployment, if I go into the open in playground, so from this place we should be able to go ahead and get the version. So this version here is 2023-03. To the next thing now is that we need to go ahead and pass on the messages. So here you can see that we have a table of messages that we need to go ahead and pass it on. So I'm just going to copy paste some messages here. So here we have got these messages wherein we do have this role which is defined. Then we have got certain role which is system. The content is you are an AI assistant that sarcastically answer the questions because we don't want to want it to answer the questions very easily. We just want to go ahead and simply uh, answer all those things sarcastically. I think I have some kind of an issue here with the Azure OpenAI. Let me just check that one more time. But okay, looks like this is okay now. Okay, looks to be okay. The text input. mm, Let me just check what are the values that I have got here. So text input one. So text input one I should be giving here. Okay, so text input one dot text, which is the input which I'm going to which I'm going to give it to it. So in the message, in the first example, we are just going to use this system role with the content that you are an AI assistant that sarcastically answer the questions. Okay, and then the user message is the input that we are providing from the text, and whatever answer that we get from that, we are going to show that into our label. So now how we can do that is instead of having the label here, I can just have it as a label text, which is our global variable. Okay, and that's it. If everything works okay, we should be able to get the results. So let me just go ahead and try to play with this. So I will just ask him some kind of an questions like when did the first airplane fly? Okay, we click this button. And now that it is going to send the request to my Azure OpenAI model, and we are going to get back the result. Okay, so since it is the same kind of an error that I have got in the custom connector as well, but okay, not to worry. I do have got backup for this one as well. So what I will do quickly is that probably let me just open up that backup, and here we have got the same kind of a thing. So here's the text input. This is the answer me kind of an text wherein I have this similar kind of an setup. Chat completion API, passing on my deployment ID, the version, and the messages. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead, uh, run here the same kind of a thing. So I'm going to ask him the same thing like when did the first airplane fly? Okay, and answer me. Okay. So hopefully this custom connector should be able to connect. And okay, so this is the kind of a sarcastic answer that you must have received from any of the bot. Okay, so probably don't create this kind of a bot into the production environment. Your manager is not definitely going to like this. But this is how we are going to get the answer from the OpenAI for our chat completion APIs. Let us go ahead and try to get some other output as well, like oh, how many pounds are in kilogram. Okay, and just click answer me. Okay, so now that this is not going to give us the answer because this is not the straightforward bot. We have trained this particular bot or this model to be a sarcastic bot. Okay, so it is not going to answer you clearly. Okay, so but yeah, again let's say for example we give it some other text like what does HTML stands for. Okay, and click answer me. Now that again I don't think it is going to give us the straightforward answer, but let us see like what kind of an answer it is going to give. Okay, so we are getting some kind of an error now, but okay, it is timeout. Let me just do it one more time if in case it works. Okay, so now that this is the answer. Probably it is not the correct one, but the bot was still kind enough to give us the actual um, answer at the end. Okay, so this is how we are able to consume all those kind of an APIs or those chat completion APIs in our power apps kind of a solution. Okay, so now that just to keep in mind the time that we have in our hand, I'm just going to quickly show you the example that I have pre-built with the Power Virtual Agent. Like if in case you are a fan of Power Virtual Agents, or if you want to go ahead and start using the Power Virtual Agents, in that case how you should be able to go ahead and use the Power Virtual Agent. So if in case you're not familiar with the Power Virtual Agent, those are nothing but the bots. So once you are into the Power Virtual Agent, everything that works in the Power Virtual Agents is on topics. So topics, that means the intention of the user with which he or she is coming to the bot, and then it is going to answer based on the intention. So these are two kind of contradictory things. For example, topic and the open AI that we are talking about. The reason why I'm saying this is like topics is something like the user intention, the intention of the user by what reason he or she is coming to your bot to get the answers. But at the same time, if you compare that with the OpenAI or Azure OpenAI, it is entirely different thing. We never go to the Azure OpenAI with our direct intent as such, because in the end, or maybe at the bottom, it is using NLP, natural language processing, to get our intent by itself and then answer that. But still, we're going to combine both of these two together topics: user intent plus the Azure OpenAI with its NLP kind of an capabilities. So this is the topic that I have created, which is nothing but the trigger. So here we have got the phrases called as gaming and Xbox. If in case we want to go ahead and do something for the Xbox, but oh, sorry. Um, okay, just give me one moment. Let me just fix this quickly. Okay, so now that, let's say, for example, we want to go ahead and use something like this, how we are going to do that. So for the phrases, even we have got Xbox and gaming, so the user is coming to your Power Virtual Agent with the intent that he or she wants to know something about gamings or Xbox. So in that case, what we are going to do is we are going to post a question to that user like, how can I help you with the Xbox issue? So we will get the user entire response. We will store that into a string. We will call that as a variable where user question. And then simply now that what we are going to do is we are going to call an action. So if you click here, add node, here we have got call an action. So in this call an action, we are going to create one Power Automate flow. So this is a Power Automate flow. Let me just show it to you as well, how this one works. So in this Power Automate flow, what we do is we get the user question as an input first. So in this Power Virtual Agent, we just get the user question first with the name of gaming question. Then we simply call the chat completion API, and here we have got the message roles for system, for user, and for assistant. So you might be wondering like from where I have got those. So let me just show that to you quickly. So if in case I again go back to my Azure portal, let me just open up my Azure portal quickly. So if in case I again go back to the chat playground, I will close this one. Now that I'm going to use some template which is readily available from Microsoft, and one of that is Xbox Customer Support Agent. Once I go ahead, hit that, this is the system message that I'm going to get. This is the user kind of a question, some kind of a question user might ask to this chat endpoint, and then this is kind of an expected answer from that. So this is a place from where I got all those things, and the same content is being pasted here for the system, for the user, and for the assistant. Okay, and then what is next is that we want to pass on the user message as a question like we could have done here. So it is the same thing that I'm doing here. And again, this is just the system instruction that you are an helpful assistant who answers in a friendly manner and everything. So what this one will do is this one will just call the chat completion API on the GPT-35 3.5 turbo model that we have created by passing on the system, user, and assistant messages by asking our user message question, and we are going to get back the answer from that. So this is the, if you go into the dynamic content of this chat completion, we are going to get the answer from here. And this answer we are going to pass back to our Power Virtual Agent that you can see here. And simply once we get that, we are going to post the message to our user with the output that we have got. So now that, let me just quickly go ahead and test out this bot. So I will just start some kind of an interaction by saying hi. So as soon as we hit that particular topic, that user intent, we are going to see the debugging point is being hit here, and then we should be able to see how the flow, how it flows through all of the questions that we have got. So I will just say that I have an issue with Xbox. Okay. Okay, so now that you can see that the intent is Xbox, so it has triggered my phrase by looking at the Xbox. Uh, I will ask like which one is the best Xbox to buy. Okay, I will ask this question. So now that what it is going to do is it is going to ask this question to my Power Virtual Agent, which is, oh sorry, not Power Virtual Agent, um, the things that we have got here with the flow, and the flow in turn is going to get the chat completion API. So okay, so here some kind of an error occurred, but if everything goes well, you should be able to see the see the thing here. Okay, but yeah, Miss, at least this is how you should be able to go ahead and use the custom connector kind of an capabilities to simply create a wrapper on top of the REST APIs which are provided by the OpenAI or Azure OpenAI in particular, and you should be able to use that across your all of the Power Platform solutions that you have developed. So this was the quick demo. I just wanted to show you for the Power Apps as well as Power Virtual Agent, and in turn it also covers the Power Automate as well. And with that, I will pass it on to Siddharth for the next demo. Siddharth, floor is yours.
Thank you, Nandip. Thank you very much for the nice introduction to Smita and Nandip, both of for the Azure OpenAI. So let me start sharing my screen. Hopefully the screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So uh, now let's see, like what we have seen is we have seen introduction to Azure OpenAI, also OpenAI, and how you can quickly use Azure OpenAI Studio to create a new Azure OpenAI resource and then use the chat model to get the answers from different models which are available, and also how to connect that to an Power Platform using custom connectors, right? In this particular part of the session, what we are going to do is there would be, I mean, there is an always and kind of requirement or a buzz or a discussion which started around whenever the OpenAI has started, gaining its popularity, and how we can use these large language models in our own custom data. Okay, and that is where the partnership between kind of Microsoft and the OpenAI comes in, and where they have come up with an Azure OpenAI where this is kind of a baby step, but they have given a way for us to integrate our own data to Azure OpenAI, and based on using the same framework or the same architecture of the large load model which the OpenAI is using, we can feed our own data, and the chatbot or the response would be either limited to our data which we would have fed in, or it can be open to the public data which is available with the OpenAI or the models which are there, plus our own data. Okay, so that is what we are going to do in our today's session. Now, coming to prerequisite, first thing is what we need is this particular part of the demo you won't be able to do using any free account or any trial account or anything. You would need to have a valid Azure subscription because the pricing tiers and everything which we are going to use as a part of this demo will be actually something wherein you would have to actually pay. So there are no few or trial versions available. So please keep that in mind, that anything which you would do as a part of this kind of demo, you would be getting charged for. So Azure subscription is must. Then you need an Azure OpenAI. As Smita said, Azure OpenAI right now is not open for everybody. If you want to have it enabled in your tenant, then you need to use a particular URL. I'm just putting that URL again here to get an access to an Azure OpenAI resource. From if it is enabled, then only you would be able to create an Azure OpenAI resource in your tenant, right? Then what you need is you need Azure Cognitive Service. Now, why do you need Azure Cognitive Service? The way the framework of applying your own data to Azure OpenAI is based actually on the Azure Cognitive Service. The Azure Cognitive Services and already an AI service which is available from Microsoft, which is basically kind of an way for us to use the search framework, okay, and apply different kind of models, different kinds of AI techniques or AI functionalities on the current data or different kinds of data, like for example text to speech, then vision API, all kind of things. So I'll skip the introduction to Azure Cognitive Service, but it's mostly the base framework of using the Azure Cognitive Service whenever we want to apply our own data. Then you need an Azure storage account, because what we are going to do as a part of today's demo would be wherein we are going to feed in some custom document to our Azure Cognitive Service, and that custom documents would be kind of indexed, and the indexes and vectors would be created, and then once the index and vectors would be created, we would feed it to the Azure OpenAI, and then when we will ask some questions, the OpenAI model would respond back from the data which is there in our document. Okay, and that is why you need the storage account, where the blob storage account wherein the documents would be uploaded, and then obviously some documents, right? Now, one thing to note here is that as of now, the data formats and the file types which are supported to feed into the Azure OpenAI model or Azure Cognitive Services, a TXT file, an MD file, which is basically a Markdown language file, an HTML file. It can be a Word, it can be PowerPoint, and it can be PDF. Okay, so these are the type of files which is right now available for us to feed in, and then only if the file type is not then other than this, then the model or the vector or the Azure Cognitive Services indexer would not be able to index the data from it, or it won't be able to read data from it, right? So again, this is the request URL, and that's it I have from the presentation side. What I'll do is we'll quickly just go through the demo on how we can do it. Okay. Uh, First thing is, let me show you the kind of document which I have used as in sample document. So I try to use four different kind of document to see that the file type are supported. One is a PDF document. This is basically a document which is an how to user guide on an Teams application which we have developed, which is basically a classified application. This is the Teams application which we have developed. Then there is an introduction PPT which Nandip has talked about in the first session, but this is a little bit old version of the document. So I have and data which is little bit old. Right now we have 4,500 plus member, plus we have 700 YouTube subscriber, but this particular document has been given as in input to the Azure Cognitive Service. So this is another PPT. Okay. Then I have this sample txt file. Okay, and in this sample txt file, I have put some text around Oppenheimer movie, which is right now he has been released last week. Why I use this typical example is that as you know, the open chat GPT model which is there, right? Basically would was has the data which is since September 2021, right? So if you tell this public chat GPT model or the chat GPT OpenAI, and if you ask that who are the actors in the Oppenheimer movie, it won't be able to give because it has only data till September 2021, and by that time only the movie was being publicly, I mean not officially announced, but it knows that it was a movie which has been directed by Christopher Nolan, which would be coming. Okay, so consider what I did in this sample text file. I just given some extra input that okay, this movie is an biographical film about the life of Robert Oppenheimer and who are the actors in it. Okay, and we will use this as a question when we would feed into the Azure OpenAI model so that it gives that answer. So these are the four documents. Okay, now what we will do is first we will just quickly see the demo. This is again the same Azure AI Studio which Nandip has introduced, and he has walked us to how to create a new Azure OpenAI service and things like that. Only difference is I did have some setup which I have done as a part of add your own data in the preview section. I'll show you later how to do that and how to configure it. But first, let's see for the sake of demo how the responses is being written by the chat gpt sorry, the Azure OpenAI. Okay. First, there is one more document which I forgot, which is user directory app. Okay, this is also kind of and how to a technical documentation about a power apps which we have built. Okay, it has some steps wherein it tells the high level solution, what are the things which you are using, how to create custom connectors and things like that. So you will see some steps which has been embedded in our document, and once we would ask, it will basically give us the response by reading these particular documents. Okay, so okay, now let's start. First, what we will do is I'll just blankly ask him, tell me the steps to create a custom connector. Okay, I know this information would be definitely available in the public domain because there are so many articles and so many learned from Microsoft documentation on how to create a custom connector, but this specific response which we are getting is from the document which we have fed in as a part of our model which we have done, right? So if says that it will give you all the steps, and go here, then click on the give the graph API name in the general section, put this, and it gives you also the references. In the references, it tells that this response is from this particular document which is there, which is user directory app part 1. Okay, and as I was showing, we do have that respond in our documents wherein it says how to create a custom connector. So it's basically gives similar kind of response from there, right? Next, what I will do is I will just ask some random questions like what are some housekeeping activities, right? Now, housekeeping activities is basically one of the slide in the Pune Tech Community introductory slide. So it says, it right now it says, it doesn't have a housekeeping activity. Can you please provide more context to clarify the questions? And it gives the reference. Now in reference, it giving about the classified. So this is not directly what I intend to do, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask some other question like what is code of conduct? And one thing to note here is the response to the questions, okay, in every session which you would build, because the way OpenAI has been designed is that it use the user's conversation history to actually create a customized response based on the previous questions being asked and the more context it gets, right? So previously that question which I had used for how to use the housekeeping was working fine. It was able to give me the particular but now it is not giving because I have directly asked it. Okay, but if you see here, it is giving me the code of conduct. Okay, and it says in the code of conduct, the Pune Tech community requires all the participants to be respectful. But it is also giving me something about this one. So this model, if you see, is not that much accurate, or it is not giving me the exact answer, because probably it might have understood that there is a code of conduct somewhere in the classified teams of the victims, why it is giving me the this particular answer. Let me try something else also. How many free community events are organized by Pune Tech community? Hopefully it should give that answer. Yesterday has given me, but let's see. Yeah, you see, it says according to the retrieved document, Pune Tech community has organized 50 plus online and free community events. This is from the PPT which you have done, right? I will try to ask how many active members of Pune Tech community. This is again would be from the Word document which we have created. Okay, it says 4,000 active members, right? So this is how we have feeded the data to the Azure OpenAI by bringing our own data to the Azure OpenAI, and specifically the four documents which I have shown, which are uploaded in the blob storage, which I will show you. And this is how the Azure OpenAI responses would be, and that is how you would be able to bring your own data here. Now consider if you are a small organization, large organization, and if you have lots and lots of data, you have your leave policies somewhere, you have your NDA document somewhere, you have your insurance document, or you have insurance plan document somewhere. If you collect all this document and you feed it into and one a blob storage, and then create a bot out of that particular model to allow user to answer from the documents which are there, it would definitely be very and useful use case for any organization. And right now all the organization who wanted to use the capability of the OpenAI are actually working around on how to apply this framework, or apply this magic of the OpenAI into their own data. They wanted to do the same thing, right? Everybody wants to use the capability, but they don't want their data to be uploaded or exposed publicly into the public large language model, but they wanted their own models to be created. And now good thing about this particular piece of functionality is that the data which we are uploading is everywhere stored in our own Azure subscription. It means you are going to store whatever you are going to store, it is going to be stored in your Azure tenant, and by default it inherits all the security and compliance parameters which any Microsoft services or Azure services comes along, right? So that is how you are to do it. Okay, so now let's quickly see how we can do that. Okay, first thing is, consider and Nandip has already shown that, but base thing is what you would do is ideally you would basically go and create an Azure Open AI service, right? And the steps to follow to create an Azure Open AI is very much similar to what Nandip has already shown. So I'm going to skip that. But once you are into an Azure Open AI service, okay, this is just behind the scene service or resource which is created. The actual user interface or the actual magic actually happens, and it has Microsoft has given us the OpenAI Studio for us to use that studio rather than the Azure Azure UI, okay, to create certain things. And behind the scenes, it might be using the same model and things like that. So once you click on explore, what it will take you? It will take you to the same Azure OpenAI Studio. Now, first and the foremost thing, again, as Nandip said, is you need a deployment, right? Because deployment is actually a model. So within the same Azure AI service, you can have multiple deployments, and that deployment is tagged to a particular model. So whenever you click on a create a new deployment, it will ask you to the model which you can use. And right now, these are the three models which are available. The model which I have created is again the name of the deployment is just deployment 11, nothing else. But the model which is GPT 3.35 Turbo, and all the parameters are the default parameters which have been used. Okay. Now once you have the deployment, and if you go to chat model, this is where you would see that we have already seen what the system messages, user messages, and things like that are, right? But if you click on add your own data, this is where it will ask you and it will say, like add your own data source. And once you click here, uh, you have three options. Okay, Azure Cognitive Service, Azure Blob Storage, and Upload Files. Okay, if you directly want to do it, no matter what you do, no matter out of all the three options, whichever option you would choose, by default, is going to create an Azure Cognitive Search Service. It would require a blob storage, and also it would require the indexes to be created. Okay, so it is up to you that if you want to do it as a part of this wizard, you can do it as a part of this wizard also. If not, you can directly go to Azure, create your Cognitive Search Service, create your storage account, configure the indexes and everything, and then come here and just configure it. Okay, now how does it look like when you want to configure it? So if you click on Azure Cognitive Service, Search Service, sorry, what it does is it will ask you first the subscription. So you select a subscription, and if you already have an Azure Cognitive Search Service, which in my case I already have, because if you see here, if I go to the resource group, and this is my resource group, this is the search service which I have created, right? OpenAI service test 1234, and this is the same search service which you are seeing here. So you just have to select that. Once you will select that service, it will ask you to select the indexes. Okay, now what is the importance of index? Index is basically a logical way of creating, or I mean, in terms of simple thing to understand, like we all know, indexes are basically a terminology, and the concept is very old in SQL also, wherein if you have a large set of database, it is good to create the indexes, and it is always good to create uh, and indexes is the one wherein basically, based on the common data or everything, it will have its own indexing value, and then the content would be stored, and then the indexes would be used to give the response back clearly, right? So here also you have to use indexes, and you have to select a particular indexes. So I'm selecting index 1 here. Then you say next, and this is where you have to do the data field mapping. Okay, so you can do a data field mapping if, for example, within your content you have certain fields to be created. Before that, let's do one thing. Let's go to Azure, and let's see what things we can do while we want to create an search service, right? So whenever you would create an Azure search service, go to Azure, click on cognitive search, right? Click you want to create a new service, select the subscription, select the group name, put the test name. I'll just give some random name here. You have to select the pricing tier. As I was saying, the free tier won't work when you wanted to use the with Azure OpenAI. Otherwise, the free tier would work. Okay, but if you want to use the with the Azure OpenAI, the free tier model won't work. You have to use either basic or anything more than that. And the pricing you can see here is, it's like 5,900 estimated pricing. You get 2 GB of storage. You can create up to maximum 15 indexes and maximum 15 indexer, and what are the search units, replicas, partition, etc. Okay, you select this, you say review and create. Okay, and then you create it. I'm not going to create it, I'm just showing you this step. Okay, now once you have your search service created, what you can do is you can just go to the search service, right? And here you will see indexes and indexers. Okay, now Creating an index is also simple. What you have to do is you just create an index, and this is where you add the field. So if you wanted to have your custom fields, okay, and again this is all search concept. So if you want to have your custom fields associated with your index, wherein you want to put the file name, you wanted to put the title, or you want to put the author or things like that of the document, that can also be done. But you, what you do is you just basically, give some random name or the name of your choice, create the field mappings, and say whether this field is retrievable, filterable, sortable, searchable, everything. All this concept is of Azure Cognitive Search Service itself, and you just create it. Okay. Now, once the indexes is created, next thing is you have to create indexer, right? Now, to create an indexer is nothing but a scheduled job which will basically, where you are telling that okay, this is my data source, right? And I want you to go and look out for any new document or any changes to the data or the content every hour, or as I tell you, or every week or every month, depending on how you want to do it, right? So for that, first we have to create a data source, right? So if you click on data source, here there are different options to create the data source. It can be a blob storage, it can be a data lake storage, SQL database, table storage, and Cosmos DB. In our example, we need a blob storage because what we are going to do is we are going to upload these documents to the blob storage, and then we can keep on uploading the document to that blob storage, and then use indexer to index all this document, and then basically feed into the AI model, right? So you, what you do is you either tell the, is it is a blob storage, give the name, and you give the container name. Now container is where logically you can create, like for example, if you want to create, if you want to use the same blob storage, but if you want to have different containers like HR documents or IT admin operation documents, you can create different folders. So it's more or less folder only, but container is where you can actually have your things set up as a part of your Azure Cognitive Service. So in my case, what we have done is we have this data source. Okay, so I'm just going to show you that data source, which is custom data source. It is associated with the Azure Blob Storage, right? And it is associated with file upload index one, which is the container name, right? And then this is the connection string and things like that. So now let's quickly see where the where the container is, right? So I was talking about the storage account. Creating a storage account also is simple, the way we create any storage account. But once you would create a storage account, what you do is you, if you go to the storage browser, and because it is a blob storage, you can create file shares, queue, tables, and the blob, right? So right now we are interested in blob. So if you click to blob, and this is where you see there are two containers which are created: file upload index one and file upload index two. Okay, you can give any name. Okay, don't confuse it with the name. To keep the relation between the index I have created and the container, I have used this name. Now within index one, I have uploaded this four document. Okay, and these are the four blob documents which are being used to train the model, plus to respond back and to read data from that, right? And so this is where the blob storage comes into picture. It means now it is up to us to automate, something uh, wherein a document from the SharePoint or from anywhere else gets uploaded to the blob storage, and then the index server do the work, right? So till now, what we have seen is this is the blob storage, and the here is the source of all our documents from where it is able to read. And then now let's go to see the indexer, because indexer is the one which would be actually keeping an eye on a particular container and then creating all the indexes and the vectors and things like that, right? Now if you see here, to create an indexer, if you say add indexer, you have to give it a name, then you have to select the index. That is why I was saying that you have to just create an index first, okay, because it needs that index to be associated with an indexer. Then what you have to do is only, if you want to go with the basic one, okay, only thing important is the name of the indexer, the indexes, and the data source, right? And from the data source, it knows that okay, I have to go into this particular index, and from the index it is associated to a container, and that is how that particular would be then. And then here you can say schedule once, hourly, daily, or custom, depending on how you want your indexer to run. please understand there will be costs associated, how many times the indexer would run, etc. So just make sure that the hot content or the hot blob which we wanted to use is based on the requirement which you need. Okay, and how frequently you want your content to be updated, or you want to be instant, or do you want to be, if it is instant, you have to run it hourly and etc. Right. So now consider indexer is done, right? And if you go here, uh, in the current indexer, which is indexer 1 for index 1, I have kept the name so that we can map it. It says when it was last run. So if you see here, today morning I have run it around 11:38 p.m. To crawl the latest document. It was able to succeed and read 4 documents which are there, and it has crawled and created its own indexes which was there, right? So so this is how the whole setup is been done. Okay. Now now when we go to Azure OpenAI Studio, right? And when we, let me just cancel this again. And now when you say, okay, click add and data source, and you either click upload files, right? Now this is the second way of doing things, right? I mean, rather than creating all the cognitive service and things like that from there, it will give you option to upload file from here itself, but it is going to upload directly into Azure storage. So this is okay when you are doing your test, right? But in the real world scenarios, you don't have to come always and then feed in your document from the Azure AI Studio, right? You need some automation to be placed, or you need some container where a document would be always placed, and it should automatically be fed into the model, and it will be able to respond back, right? So this is just for the test purpose. What you can do is you can just select how you want to do it. I'll say just content title. I'll click next. Sorry. Mm, what is missing? No. Let me just refresh it. So when you're creating your Hello World program, it is okay for you to create by directly uploading files directly from here. Okay, it's not actually changing. Ah, I don't know why. Let me just open it again. Till now, if anybody has any question or anything, feel free to unmute and ask. I know I'm being going a little bit fast for the sake of the time, because we have one more demo to be presented by Kunj. Okay, so if you click on upload files, it is again still going to ask you for the blob storage and cognitive service, right? That is why I was saying that no matter out of all the 3 options which you choose, it will ask you. And if you have already a blob storage associated with your subscription, it is asking you to select one. But if not, you can directly go and click from here. Okay, you won't get an ability to create the blob storage or cognitive service from the OpenAI Studio. It is always going to take you to the actually portal.azure, and from there itself you have to do it. Okay, and that is why I show you how to do that from there. But only thing is, if you go and, for example, if you would have created a blob storage, one thing important is you have to enable the course also, because the OpenAI service has to go and read data from that storage. So cross origin resource should be enabled. And here, if you don't have a cognitive service, you click on here, create it, come back here and select the cognitive service, and you give your index name. Okay, if you are giving an index name from here, it is going to just index this document once while you are in this wizard. Okay, but next time when you will come, the index is not going to be created. So that is why we need that indexer and everything in place. Okay, you give some name, you click on next, and this is where it will ask you to the upload the files. Now if I'm going to upload this file, what it is going to do is it is going to create a new index, and then it is going to associate the it is going to create a new container also, and it is going to upload all the new documents which I have uploaded into that new container. Okay, I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to go back, again go back, uh, and I'm just going to change to Azure Cognitive Service. Okay, now consider you have done everything. You have your cognitive service in place, you have your indexes in place. What you have to do is you have to just configure it. Okay, and here that is where you have to select your index. Okay, and my index one is the one which is actually currently running on the 4 documents which I have uploaded. title, then give the data mapping fields, click next, okay, and save and close. This is where now the current test session, it knows that I have to respond to the data which is associated with this particular search service or with this particular index, and that is why it is responding the way we want to do it. Okay, and as I was saying, it might respond differently, right? Because now we have a new chat session, and it doesn't know the history of the conversation which was there. It do it now. See, by default the first time itself it told me that what is the code of conduct, right? And if I now I'm ask him what are some housekeeping activities, probably it will give me the answer on what are the housekeeping activities. No, it doesn't. Okay, it says that I do have information about classified app, Oppenheimer movie, and Azure AD app, but I didn't know anything about housekeeping activity. But as and when you would ask and as and when you would train, it will get smarter in itself and it will able to answer your answer your questions also. Okay, the way we want to do it. So this is how you can bring your own data. I mean, this is the end of my session. If there are any questions, I would definitely be happy to answer. Just to conclude and summarize in couple of sentences, as I said, what you have to understand here is if you want to bring your own data, first thing is you need an Azure OpenAI service, right? Then what you need is an Azure Cognitive Service, and within your Azure Cognitive Service, you have to set up your own data source. Data source can be a blob storage, SQL, and things like that. I have not yet tried with the Azure SQL table storage and everything. I'm going to do it later, but right now the official Microsoft documentation also, okay, which says use your own data, has a pure example of how to upload it using the blob storage, right? So second step, create your own data source. Third step, create an index, associate your index with your data source. Fourth step, create the indexer and schedule the indexer the way you wanted it, right? Then upload the documents onto the blob storage. Okay, you can do it either as a part of the wizard which I have shown right now, but it would be temporary, or you can set up your own automation to move some documents to Azure blob storage. There are many various ways to do it, like, because see, Azure Cognitive Service, blob storage, and storage account concept are not new. Okay, only thing new is how to connect your Azure OpenAI service to your Azure Cognitive Service and give you capability to bring your own data here, right? So yes, creating the indexer, schedule the indexer or run the indexer once so that the data is indexes in the documents, and then come to the chat playground and you would be able to use that chat playground to get the response. Now if you want to publish this, you can also publish it as a new web application. And if you do that, what it will do is it will give you one particular URL, which would be a bot URL. By default, that web application would be Azure AD authenticated application, so nobody else would be able to use that application other than the users of your tenant. It will ask user to log in, and then only he would be able to use that application. Or you can use this the way Nandip has shown. You can use view code, go to C sharp, call this app service API the way the API was there for what Nandip has shown. Same way, if you see that I have an API URL for the service which I have created, which is Azure OpenAI Service 601. Okay, Kunj is going to show us demo on consuming this service in Power Apps also, so that you know that if you don't want to build, if you don't want to use or deploy to custom web application, but you wanted to do it in your local platform like Power Apps, same way by creating custom connectors and connecting this service, making calls to this API, you would be able to do that. With that, I would hand it over to Kunj. Kunj, over to you.
Thank you, Siddharth. Okay, let me share my screen. Before I start, okay, uh, a little bit about myself. My name is Kunj, and I hope my screen is visible. Is the screen visible?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. So yes, my name is Kunj, and I have 9 years of experience in and around Microsoft technologies. These are few of my social media handlers, so you can connect with me me and get in touch with me if you have any doubts, queries, or if you want to have some. From last 3 months, I've started as a full-time freelancer. So if you have any projects related to Microsoft technologies, you can directly contact to me. Okay, so today in this session, we'll be seeing how we can leverage OpenAI in Power Platform. Okay, so as we have seen in Nandip's demo, there was a pre-configured custom connector. Now, let's say, for example, we do not want to have a pre-configured custom connector, and we want to create our own custom connector. How we can create it and how we can leverage it in our Power Apps and Power Automate and Power Virtual Agent. So, in the complete Power Platform family. So before I start the session, let me do one thing. Let me share you one of the polls. Okay, please give me just 1 second. I'll share you a poll, and I just want to see what do you want to get generated from this Dell E model. Okay, so till now we have not talked about Dell E model. What it does is it creates images based on your text which you have provided, and we have leveraged this in Power Apps. So first we'll go through the demo, and then we'll see how we can create a custom connector. So if someone wants to see something over here, just type it out in your poll. I think the poll is live, right?
Yes, it is live.
Okay. So as you can see in the current scenario, what we have done is we have given a text called as image of a girl in red dress with red rose. Okay. So someone has written India, someone has written WC, but we need to be more specific. Okay. So let's say for example, I see something as Indian elephant dancing. Okay. So I can write Indian elephant dancing. Okay. And I can just mention image of. Okay. And when I click on generate, it goes to Azure OpenAI and leverages the Dell E model to get the image. Okay. And the image is actually stored in our Azure blob storage only, but we are not charged for that. Okay, so if you see, the image is generated of an Indian elephant dancing. Okay, why it has all these things is because we have specifically mentioned an Indian elephant. Okay, so we have all the colorful and all these things. Now if I copy this the URL, and if I go to a new tab and just open it, I'll get the similar image. Okay, so it is nothing but a URL which we get from the Dell E model, and we render it in our Power App. We'll see it more in the detail. And the second demo which we are going to see is how we can leverage the chat based things. Okay, so in this scenario, what I've done is I have used the same model which Siddharth has developed. Okay, so I can type a question which is related to Pune Tech community. Okay, so I can type what is Pune Tech community. Okay, and I can just add an enter. So the cat API is now getting called. Okay, so here the model which Siddharth has developed is getting rendered. So we are getting the data from that model. So if you see, I get the complete information related to Pune Tech community. Okay, so this is how we can leverage the power of OpenAI in different use cases. Okay, so this is two of the use cases, but there are n number of use cases which you can use. Okay, so why Delhi? If you want, so this image actually which gets generated has no copyright things. Okay, because it has been generated by AI currently. So few of the images, if you search in Google, has copyright issues and all those things. But when you leverage this kind of thing, you can use the image in any of the application which, without thinking of the copyright issues. Okay, this is how you can leverage these things. Okay, I hope this is understood by everyone. Now we have gone through the demo. Now we'll see how to create a custom connector. Okay, before going to that, let me just show you what everyone has shown you. Okay, if you go in the playground, we have a chat, completions, and Dali. Okay, so completions is nothing but the endpoint which we get for the chat models. Okay, so if you see in the deployment, we have deploy 11 which Siddharth has already created, and we are going to leverage that in our chat based application. Okay, so now if you go to the chat, we see something called as view code, which everyone has shown, right? But if you see, it has only libraries for Python and C sharp. there's no library for different applications. So let's say, for example, I want to leverage React.js, the front end technologies, where I can directly call the APIs, or where I want to create a Node.js based API, where I want to leverage this APIs. Okay, create a wrapper around it. So what I have done is I have created a Postman collection which has all the APIs which are related to Open API. Okay, so for first we'll go through the Delhi model. So if you see in the Delhi model, what I've done is if I go to the JSON, or if you go to the C URL, or if you see the endpoint, see it has the complete endpoint, right? You just copy this. So two very important things over here is the endpoint and the key. Rest everything is in the body. So if you just see in the Postman, what I've done is I've copied that endpoint and pasted it over here. And in the header section, what I've done is I have added that API key. Okay. Please do not use this API key. We are going to delete it once the demo is completed. So this is how you can add the header in the API key. So this is getting authenticated only using the API key. There's nothing else which is authenticating our endpoint. Okay. And in the body section, what I give is I can give the prompt. Okay, that I want a Seattle skyline and a space needle impersonation painting. Okay, I can give the size, what size of image I want. I can give how many images I want. Okay, so this, if I want more than one images, I can give more than n. Okay, these are number of iterations it goes through. Okay, and once you click on send, so let me just click on send. You see there is a response which says that status is not running, and it gives us an ID. Okay, so we can leverage this ID to fetch the image. Okay, it does not give us the image directly. It takes some time to generate that image and then give it back to us. Okay, so we just need to copy this URL. There's another endpoint, okay, which is required to download that image. Okay, the endpoint over here is it requires an ID. So I'll just paste the ID which I got it from the prompt, and I'll just send it. It has similar architecture. It is get API. It has headers with the API key. And once you see, I get a URL. See, it has a result. It has all the parameters that when it was created, this is date and time when it get expired. This is very important. Please note that once the expiry date has arrived, your URL wherein your image is stored in the blob storage expires, and you will not be able to use it again. Okay, so it is better if you can download it and keep it somewhere if you want to use it. Okay, then do not use the URL directly. If I copy this URL, paste it in the chat, in the browser, I see the image of what I have requested. Okay, what I had requested was the Seattle skyline and the Space Needle impersonation painting. Okay, so this is a painting, not an image. Okay, and it has all the things which we requested. Okay, so this is how, these are the two APIs which would be required just to get the Dell E model API, the image. Okay, so now to create this in a custom connector, it is very simple. You go to make.powerautomate.com. There's something called as custom connector. You click on create from blank. Okay, so let me just give one AI Azure. Okay, once I click on this, we get few questions to be answered. You can upload an image if you have. So for now, I have one image, a logo for OpenAI. You can give the background color if you want to change it. You can connect via on-premises if you are connecting via on-premises. If there are some other APIs which you want to connect to on-premises. Okay. So as we have seen in the thing which Nandeep has shown us, wherein he had a different endpoint wherein the host was open.azure.com. But in this case, I just want to use it for my tenant only. So I'll not give additional parameters. I'll directly use this host API. And if you see every time the base API has an open API after it. Okay. So what we'll do is to save the time and not use it again and again, I'll just give the base URL as open API. Now the security is actually the API key which is added in the header. Okay, so if I go to the API key, I'll give the parameter label which is nothing but API hyphen key. Okay, parameter name, we'll just give the API hyphen key. It is in the header. Okay, so we are mentioning that there is a API key which would come to the header with the parameter name as API key, and we will pass the value. Okay, because for each and every tenant it would be different. So this is how we can leverage. It's kind of a variable which we are creating. Okay, so now when you create a custom connector, there are two things. There is something called as action, and there is something called as trigger. Okay, so in Power Automate, in simple terms, when the first thing which you see is trigger. Okay, so how your Power Automate gets triggered. So because of that, we have two different things, actions and trigger. Anything after trigger is something called as actions. Okay, so you want to do the steps after trigger is called as action. For this, what we'll do is we'll create action because there's no trigger to it, right? So there's nothing like on this particular time you want to do something. Okay, so I can give a name called as Dell API, and there's a post one, okay, wherein we are sending our tokens. Okay, I'll just paste it over here. And we just need to import from the sample. Okay, it's very simple. You click on import from sample, it asks you, okay, what is the verb? So for first API, which is this one, wherein we send the prompt response, we specify the complete URL, paste it over here, specify the headers if we have it, anything. Okay, the API security headers will be appended over here directly. No need of additional sending over here. Now we just send the body. Okay, this is just a sample and we'll just import it. Now, if you see, it has the API query, API version in the query. Okay. So if you see in the query string, we have something called as API version. It directly understood that, okay, everything after question mark is an query parameter and it would be different for different things. Okay. Hence, it has created a API version query. Now, if you see in the header section, there's no header, but the API key would be appended directly. Okay. This is the first action which would be required. Now we would require another action called as get the API. Okay. So get the image. Now we can just say that del e get image API. Hello.
Yes, Kunj.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So as you can see, we are importing the second one wherein we want to download the image. So it is nothing but a get call. Okay. And for the get call, if you see, we have something called as a ID over here, which we replaced, right? So if we want to use this, what we can do is we can just copy this, and in the curly parameters or the curly brackets, we just specify the variable. Okay, so this is the ID of photo. Okay, and we just import it. Now if you see, it created a path called as ID of photo and it is appended over here. So the images with this ID will pass, and will even pass the API version and all those things which is added. Because it's a get call, there's no body and all those things. Now we can just create the custom connector and we can just test the custom connector. Just give it a second or so for it to get connected. In the meantime, if anyone has any doubt regarding this. Okay, so now it is connected. What we'll do is we'll create the new connection and we'll just test it before we it just specify the API key. Okay, so here the API key is this. I'll just specify this, create the connection, and once it is connected, we'll have few questions. The API version. Okay, the API version is 2023-06-21 preview. It is still in preview. We'll just add the raw body. We'll just specify the same prompts, or I'll just specify the prompt which we have used here. Okay, and now you see it would give us a different image and not the similar image. So if I just paste this, if I the connection has not been created. Okay, maybe I need to refresh. Okay, now I test the operation and you see there's a response with the ID. I copy this ID and I go back to the second API call. I give the ID of the photo and the API version. The API version is the similar one which we had. and we just specified and click on the test operation. You see the image URL which we got. Okay, so now if I use this image URL and open it in the browser, see, it has a different flavor and different taste. Okay, so every time whenever you call with a different prompt or with the same prompt as well, there is a chance that AI would generate you a different kind of image and not a similar image. Okay, this is because you want a, or this is because it designs by itself. Okay, so it takes from few images and get it done for you. So this is how it is done. Now, if you see, once this is done, you can leverage this in Power Apps and Power Automate. What we'll do is I've already created the app. I'll just edit it quickly and go through the steps. So as Nandip has mentioned in the Power Apps, what we need to do is we need to go to the data section and import our custom connector. And we just need to specify what is the endpoint or what are the things which we are going to call and add the parameters. Okay. So if I skip this, if I go to the data section, you see Azure OpenAI Del E I have already imported. Okay. For this custom connector, I had created two endpoints. So now if I go back to my tree view and just click on this button, and if I go to on select property, you see what I've done is I've called this custom connector and the first one which is called a send image prompt. Okay, here we are specifying that anything which is written in the text input would be sent to my API and I'll get response. Okay, so how I will get responses, this is nothing but a timer. I've set a duration. Okay, because it takes some time for the image to get generated. So once the timer is completed on timer end, I have called another API, okay, the get image API, okay, wherein I specify the ID of that particular image which I got when I posted that image, okay, and few additional parameters which are required. So once this is done, and if I click on then generate image, the prompt which is present over here will first get the ID and then it will call another API to get the image. It will download the image and it will display it over here, wherein I have the image component. So this is how I have leveraged the Delhi model. Similarly, for the chat model, what I've done is if you go to the chat here in the button, I have leveraged something called as Power Automate. Okay. So if you see, there is something called as fetch open API response dot run. So whenever I click on this button, there would be one Power Automate which would get called, and the input of this would be text input 3.text. So this text which is coming from here would be inputted to this Power Automate. And if I could quickly edit this Power Automate, it has a similar flavor wherein the input would be from Power Apps. I'll call the chat message. So this is coming from the custom section. So if I add an action, if I go to the custom section, there is something called as Azure OpenAI. Okay. So I have created two different, one for the chat and one for the DALI. So similarly, if you want to leverage, you can leverage it for two different, or you can just create one and use it. Okay. So here what I've done is I've used the system as you are an AI assistant. So this we have talked about in the previous talks, and the user message is sent over here. So we are specifying that the role of the one who is sending is a user, and I want to get all these parameters. So these are all the fixed parameters which Nandip has already explained to you. Okay, and here I have checked that okay, if I am getting the response properly, doing all the stuff, getting all these things, if it is success, I send it with this text and input, and if it is a failure, I send it in a different way that okay, there was some error. Okay, so this is how I have leveraged that Power Automate to build the kind of a chat based interface, and this is in the Power App. Similarly, as Nandip has mentioned, we can leverage it in the PVA as well. Okay, so this is it, how you can create the custom connector and how you can leverage the potential of Azure OpenAI with Power Automate and the Power Platform. You can leverage it in different programming languages as well, where you do not have the what do you say, the modules or things not available. You can leverage directly the API because REST API is currently being used across all the applications. Okay, so you can just use it and do it. So this is it. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute, and I'll be I'll be stop sharing my screen and we can just